What would you do if you saw a stranger struggling in the pouring rain? For Emma Clark, a single mother barely making ends meet, stopping to help an elderly man seemed like the right thing to do, even though she had nothing to spare. She had no idea that this one act of kindness would change everything. The man she rescued wasn't who he appeared to be, and what happened the next day would shake her world in ways she never imagined. This is a story about compassion, faith, and the unexpected miracles that come when we choose kindness over convenience. Emma Clark sat at her kitchen table, the glow of a single lamp casting long shadows across the stack of bills in front of her. Her fingers trembled slightly as she sorted through them. Electricity, water, rent, groceries. Each envelope felt heavier than the last. Outside, the first drops of rain began to tap against the window, soft at first, then building into a steady rhythm. "Mom, can I have a snack?" Her 8-year-old son Tyler looked up from his homework, his brown eyes wide and hopeful. Emma smiled, though her heart ached. "Of course, sweetheart. Let me get you some crackers and peanut butter." She stood and moved to the small kitchen, opening cupboards that were more empty than full. The peanut butter jar was nearly scraped clean and the crackers were the last of the box. But Tyler didn't complain. He never did. That was what made it harder. As a single mother, Emma had been carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders for 3 years now, ever since her husband, Marcus, had walked out without warning, leaving her with a mountain of debt and a son who still asked when Daddy was coming home. She'd taken on 2 jobs, mornings at a local diner serving coffee and eggs to early risers, and evenings cleaning offices downtown. Between shifts, she barely had time to breathe, let alone rest. But no matter how hard she worked, the math never seemed to add up. Rent was due in 5 days, and she was still $200 short. Her car, a 15-year-old sedan that sputtered and coughed every morning, needed new brakes, and Tyler's shoes were wearing thin at the soles. "Mom, are we going to be okay?" Tyler's voice broke through her thoughts. Emma turned, forcing brightness into her voice. "Of course we are, baby. We always are." He nodded, but she could see the worry in his young face. He was too smart, too observant. He knew things were tight. He knew she skipped meals so he could eat. He knew she cried sometimes when she thought he was asleep. That night, as the rain began to fall harder, Emma tucked Tyler into bed and kissed his forehead. "I love you more than anything in this world," she whispered. "I love you too, Mom," he murmured, already half asleep. Emma stood in the doorway for a moment, watching him. He deserved so much more than this. He deserved stability, security, a future without worry, and she would give it to him somehow. She just didn't know how yet. She returned to the kitchen and looked at the bills again. The numbers blurred as tears filled her eyes. She wiped them away quickly, refusing to let despair win. She had survived this long. She would survive tomorrow too. But as the rain pounded against the roof and the wind howled outside, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that something had to give. She didn't know if it would be a breakthrough or a breaking point. All she could do was pray for strength and hope that tomorrow would be kinder than today. The next evening, Emma's shift at the diner had run late. A customer had lingered, ordering coffee after coffee, leaving her behind schedule for her cleaning job downtown. Now, as she drove through the storm, her windshield wipers working overtime, she was already calculating how much time she'd lost. The rain was relentless, sheets of water pouring down so thick she could barely see 10 feet ahead. Her hands gripped the steering wheel tightly as she navigated the slick streets, her worn tires struggling for traction. That's when she saw him. An elderly man stood alone on the sidewalk, drenched to the bone, his thin coat clinging to his frail frame. He was hunched over, one hand clutching a small bag, the other braced against a lamppost as if it were the only thing keeping him upright. His silver hair was plastered to his head, and even from a distance, Emma could see he was shivering. Her first instinct was to keep driving. She was already late. She couldn't afford to lose this cleaning job. It was the only thing keeping the lights on. And besides, what could she really do? She had nothing to offer. But then she looked again. The man's legs seemed unsteady. He took a step forward and stumbled, nearly falling into the street. Emma's heart clenched. She thought of Tyler, safe and warm at home with Mrs. Rodriguez, their elderly neighbor who watched him when Emma worked nights. She thought of her own father, who had passed away 5 years ago. If he were out here struggling and alone, she would want someone to stop. Without thinking further, she pulled over to the curb and rolled down her window. Rain immediately sprayed into the car. "Excuse me, sir, are you okay?" she called out. The man turned slowly, his eyes wide with surprise. Up close, Emma could see the deep lines etched into his face, the wariness in his gaze. He looked to be in his 70s, maybe older. I'm all right," he said, though his voice was weak and unconvincing. "You don't look all right," Emma said gently. "Can I give you a ride somewhere? Get you out of this rain?" The man hesitated, studying her face. For a moment, Emma thought he might refuse. Then his shoulders sagged, and he nodded slowly. I would be very grateful. Thank you." Emma quickly unlocked the doors, and the man climbed into the passenger seat, water dripping from his coat onto the worn upholstery. She grabbed an old towel from the back seat and handed it to him. "Here, try to dry off a little," she said. "You're very kind," he murmured, his hand shaking as he took the towel. "Where do you need to go?" Emma asked, pulling back into traffic. The man gave her an address on the other side of town, a quiet neighborhood Emma knew only by reputation. It was where the old mansions stood, the ones with iron gates and sprawling gardens. She glanced at him, puzzled. His clothes, though soaked, didn't look expensive. His shoes were scuffed. He carried himself with dignity. But there was something humble about him. "That's quite a ways," Emma said. "What were you doing out here?" The man was silent for a moment. "My driver was supposed to pick me up from a meeting. He never came. My phone died. I tried to walk, but—" He trailed off, coughing slightly. Emma's chest tightened. "You shouldn't be walking in weather like this, not at your age." She paused, then added softly, "I'm glad I saw you." The man turned to look at her, something unreadable in his eyes. "So am I." They drove in comfortable silence for a while, the rain drumming on the roof. Emma's mind raced. She was now definitely going to be late for her cleaning job. She might even lose it. But somehow, that didn't matter as much as it should have. When they finally reached the address, Emma's eyes widened. The house, no, the estate was enormous. A wrought iron gate stood at the entrance, and beyond it, a grand stone mansion glowed softly in the rain. This is your home?" she asked, stunned. The man nodded. "Yes, thank you again, miss. You done more for me tonight than you know." Emma shook her head. "It's nothing, really. Anyone would have done the same." The man's expression turned sad. "You'd be surprised. Most people wouldn't have stopped." He reached into his coat pocket, and Emma quickly held up her hand. "Please, don't. I don't want anything. I'm just glad you're safe." The man studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "What's your name?" "Emma. Emma Clark." "Emma," he repeated, as if committing it to memory. "Thank you, Emma Clark. You have a kind heart." And with that, he stepped out into the rain and disappeared through the gate. Emma sat there for a moment, staring after him, before finally pulling away. She didn't know who he was. She didn't need to. She had simply done what felt right. The next morning, Emma woke with a start. She'd overslept something she never did. Panic shot through her as she glanced at the clock. 8:30. She was supposed to be at the diner at 7. She threw on clothes and rushed to wake Tyler, only to find him already dressed and eating cereal at the table, courtesy of Mrs. Rodriguez. "Mija, you needed the sleep," the elderly woman said gently. "I called the diner. Told them you weren't feeling well." Emma's heart sank. "Mrs. Rodriguez, I can't afford to miss shifts. One morning won't kill them," Mrs. Rodriguez said firmly. "You work yourself to the bone, Emma. Even the strongest woman needs rest." Before Emma could argue, there was a knock at the door. Emma frowned. She wasn't expecting anyone. Cautiously, she opened the door to find a well-dressed man in a crisp suit standing in the hallway. He looked official, professional, completely out of place in her modest building. "Ms. Emma Clark?" he asked politely. "Yes?" Emma's voice was uncertain. "My name is Richard Hastings. I'm an attorney representing Mr. Jonathan Aldridge. May I come in? I have something important to discuss with you." Emma's confusion deepened. "I'm sorry, I don't know anyone by that name." The man smiled gently. "You may know him as the elderly gentleman you helped last night, in the rain." Emma's breath caught. "Oh, is he all right?" "He's more than all right, thanks to you. May I?" Hesitantly, Emma stepped aside and let the man in. Tyler watched wide-eyed from the table as the attorney sat down on their worn couch, placing a leather portfolio on his lap. "Ms. Clark," Richard began, "Mr. Aldridge asked me to come here personally to thank you. You see, he's not just anyone. He's the founder and CEO of Aldridge Industries, one of the largest private corporations in the state." Emma blinked. I had no idea." "He didn't want you to know," Richard said. "He was out yesterday meeting with community members, trying to understand the struggles of ordinary people. His driver was delayed due to the storm, and his phone died. He found himself stranded and vulnerable, and you stopped. You didn't ask for anything. You didn't ask for anything. You didn't expect anything. You simply helped." Emma shook her head. "Anyone would have, but they didn't," Richard interrupted gently. "7 cars passed him before you stopped. Mr. Aldridge counted." Tears pricked Emma's eyes. She didn't know what to say. Richard opened his portfolio and pulled out an envelope. "Mr. Aldridge wanted me to give you this." Emma took the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was a check. When she saw the amount, her knees nearly buckled. $50,000. I can't accept this," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You can, and you will," Richard said kindly. "Mr. Aldridge insists. He knows you're struggling. He had me look into your situation, not to invade your privacy, but because he wanted to help in a meaningful way. This money is to cover your debts, your rent, your son's needs. It's a gift, with no strings attached." Emma's hand shook as she stared at the check. $50,000. It was more money than she'd ever seen in her life. It was enough to change everything. "There's more," Richard continued. "Mr. Aldridge would like to offer you a position at Aldridge Industries, a stable job with benefits, a livable salary, and opportunities for advancement. He believes your compassion and character are exactly what his company needs." Emma couldn't speak. Tears streamed down her face as the weight of 3 years of struggle began to lift from her shoulders. Tyler ran to her, wrapping his small arms around her waist. "Mom, are you okay?" She looked down at him, then at the attorney, then at the check in her hands. I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Richard said with a warm smile. "Say yes to a better future. You deserve it." And for the first time in years, Emma allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, things were going to be okay. 2 weeks later, Emma walked through the gleaming glass doors of Aldridge Industries for the first time as an employee. Her heart pounded with a mixture of nerves and excitement. She'd spent the past days paying off her debts, buying Tyler new clothes and shoes, and even putting money aside for his future education. The relief was indescribable, but now came the hard part, proving she deserved this chance. Richard Hastings met her in the lobby, his warm smile putting her at ease. "Welcome, Emma. Mr. Aldridge is looking forward to seeing you." He led her through the building, a towering structure of steel and glass, filled with bustling employees and the hum of productivity. Emma felt small and out of place, but she held her head high. She had worked hard her entire life. She knew the value of dedication. They stopped at a large office on the top floor. Richard knocked softly before opening the door. Inside, the elderly man from the rain sat behind a massive mahogany desk, but he looked different now, stronger, more commanding. His silver hair was neatly combed, his suit impeccable, yet when he saw Emma, his face softened, and he stood to greet her. "Emma," Jonathan Aldridge said warmly. "Thank you for coming, Mr. Beaver Aldridge," Emma said, her voice steady despite her nerves. I don't know how to thank you." "You already have," he said simply, "by being who you are. Please, sit." Emma took a seat across from him, and Jonathan leaned back, studying her with kind eyes. "I've been in business for 40 years, he began. "I've built this company from the ground up. I've met thousands of people, investors, executives, politicians. But that night in the rain, I was reminded of something I'd almost forgotten." He paused, his gaze distant. "I was reminded that wealth and success mean nothing if we lose our humanity. You didn't know who I was. You had every reason to drive past me. You were late, you were struggling, you had your own burdens to carry. But you stopped. You saw a person in need and you helped." Emma's eyes welled with tears. "That's the kind of person I want in my company," Jonathan continued. "Not just someone who can crunch numbers or close deals, but someone who understands what really matters. Compassion, integrity, kindness." He slid a folder across the desk. "This is your job description. You'll be working in our community outreach division, helping us connect with people who need support, people like you once were. I want you to use your experience, your empathy, to make a real difference." Emma opened the folder, scanning the details. The salary was more than she'd ever dreamed of earning. The benefits were comprehensive, and the work helping others felt like a calling. "I won't let you down," she said, her voice firm. "I know you won't," Jonathan said with a smile. Over the following weeks, Emma threw herself into her new role. She visited shelters, food banks, and community centers. She listened to people's stories of hardship, resilience, and hope, and she used the company's resources to make tangible changes, funding after-school programs, providing job training, supporting single parents. For the first time in years, Emma felt like she was doing more than just surviving. She was thriving, and more importantly, she was helping others do the same. Tyler noticed the change too. He smiled more, laughed more. He no longer worried about whether they'd have enough to eat or if the lights would stay on. He was just a kid again, carefree and happy. One evening, as they sat together on their new couch in their new apartment, a modest but comfortable two-bedroom with actual heating and windows that didn't leak, Tyler looked up at her. "Mom, are you happy now?" Emma pulled him close, kissing the top of his head. "I'm more than happy, sweetheart. I'm grateful." And she was. Grateful for second chances, for unexpected kindness, and for the reminder that even in the darkest storms, light can break through. 6 months into her new position, Emma had become an integral part of Aldridge Industries' community initiatives. But success hadn't changed her. If anything, it had deepened her commitment to helping others. One afternoon, Emma was reviewing applications for a new scholarship fund when she came across a name that made her pause: Maria Santos. The application told a familiar story: single mother, 2 jobs, struggling to make ends meet. Maria's daughter, Sophia, was a straight-A student who dreamed of becoming a doctor, but there was no money for college. Maria was applying for help on her daughter's behalf, her words humble and heartfelt. Emma's chest tightened. She saw herself in those words. Without hesitation, she approved the full scholarship and made a note to personally reach out to Maria. The following week, Emma invited Maria and Sophia to the Aldridge Industries office. When they arrived, Maria looked overwhelmed, much like Emma had felt months ago. "Thank you so much for seeing us," Maria said, her accent thick with emotion. I didn't think anyone would actually help." Emma smiled warmly. "I know exactly how you feel. Please, sit." As they talked, Emma shared her own story, the struggles, the fear, the moment Jonathan Aldridge had changed her life. Maria listened with tears streaming down her face. "You understand," Maria whispered. "You really understand." "I do," Emma said gently. "And I want you to know that you're not alone anymore. Sophia's education is covered all 4 years, plus books and living expenses. And I'd like to help you find a better job, one with stability and benefits." Maria broke down sobbing, and Sophia wrapped her arms around her mother. Emma felt her own tears fall, but they were tears of joy. This was why she was here. This was her purpose. Over the months that followed, Emma expanded her efforts. She started a mentorship program pairing successful professionals with struggling single parents. She organized job fairs, financial literacy workshops, and childcare assistance programs. And she did it all with the same compassion that had defined her life. Because she knew what it felt like to be desperate, to be scared, to wonder if tomorrow would ever be better than today. One evening, Jonathan Aldridge called her into his office. "Emma, I want you to know that you've exceeded every expectation I had," he said. "You've changed lives, dozens of them, and you've reminded this entire company what we should be working toward." Emma smiled. "I'm just doing what you taught me, Mr. Aldridge, choosing kindness over convenience." Jonathan's eyes glistened. "You've taught me just as much. maybe more. He paused, then said, I'm creating a new executive position, Vice President of Community Impact, and I want you to lead it. Emma's breath caught. Mr. Aldridge, I don't have a degree. You have something far more valuable, he interrupted. You have heart, you have experience, and you have the respect of everyone you worked with. Say yes, Emma. She thought of Tyler, now thriving in a good school with dreams of his own. She thought of Maria, Sophia, and all the others she'd helped. She thought of the frightened, exhausted woman she'd been just months ago. And she thought of the choice she'd made on a rainy night to stop, to help, to care. Yes, she said, her voice strong. Yes, I'll do it. 1 year after that rainy night, Aldridge Industries hosted its annual charity gala and event that brought together business leaders, philanthropists, and community advocates from across the state. Emma stood backstage in an elegant dress she never thought she'd own, her heart racing. She'd been asked to speak to share her story and the impact of the company's community programs. Tyler was in the audience, sitting with Mrs. Rodriguez, both beaming with pride. Jonathan Aldridge sat at the head table, his eyes warm with encouragement. As Emma stepped onto the stage and looked out at the sea of faces, she felt a moment of doubt. Who was she to be here, speaking to these people? But then she remembered where she'd come from, and she remembered why she was here. Good evening, she began, her voice steady. A year ago, I was a single mother working 2 jobs, struggling to keep the lights on and food on the table. I was exhausted, scared, and losing hope. The room fell silent. One rainy night, I saw a stranger who needed help. He was elderly, soaking wet, and struggling to stand. I was late for work. I couldn't afford to stop, but something in me said I had to. She paused, her eyes finding Jonathan's across the room. I didn't know that stranger was Jonathan Aldridge. I didn't know he was wealthy or powerful. I just knew he was a human being who needed help, and that was enough. Emma's voice grew stronger. What I've learned since that night is this: kindness is never wasted. Every small act of compassion creates ripples we can't see. When we choose to help others, even when it's inconvenient, even when we have nothing to give, we become part of something bigger than ourselves. She gestured to the crowd. Because of Mr. Aldridge's generosity, my son and I have a future we never imagined. But more than that, I've been given the chance to pay it forward. This year alone, we've helped over 300 families find stable housing, secure employment, and access education. We've changed lives just as mine was changed. Tears streamed down her face now, but she didn't wipe them away. I stand here tonight not as someone who was saved, but as someone who learned that we all have the power to save each other. It doesn't take wealth, it doesn't take status. It takes only one thing: a willingness to see the humanity in every person we meet and to act with compassion. The room erupted in applause. Emma saw people wiping their eyes, nodding, moved by her words. When she stepped off the stage, Jonathan was waiting. He embraced her like a father. You've made me proud, he whispered. Not because of what you've accomplished here, but because of who you've always been. Emma hugged him tightly. Thank you for seeing me, for believing in me. Thank you, he said, for reminding me what really matters. Later that night, as Emma tucked Tyler into bed, he looked up at her with sleepy eyes. Mom, you were amazing tonight. Emma smiled. You know what, sweetheart? I think we're going to be okay. More than okay. I know, Tyler said, because you never gave up, even when things were hard. Emma kissed his forehead. And I never will. As long as we have each other, we have everything we need. As she turned off the light and closed his door, Emma stood in the hallway of their beautiful new home and reflected on the journey that had brought her here. One choice, one rainy night, one act of kindness. It had changed everything. And now, every single day, she had the privilege of helping others experience that same transformation, reminding them that they mattered, that they were seen, and that hope was never truly lost. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring true stories that celebrate the power of faith, kindness, and humanity. Remember, you never know how one small act of compassion might change a life, yours or someone else's. Choose kindness, always. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring true stories that celebrate the power of faith, kindness, and humanity. Remember, you never know how one small act of compassion might change a life, yours or someone else's. Choose kindness, always.